guys, welcome back to Wheelwork. I trust you're doing well as always. So today and over the course of the next week and a half, we're going to be doing a little bit of sporadic work to my HZ, formerly known as Z. So for those of you that are familiar with my channel, late last year, we did a whole bunch of work on this thing. Make sure you check that video out. We did a whole bunch of upgrades on this and just some maintenance stuff. And just sort of going to be continuing on with a little bit of more maintenance things and just sort of small repairs and a few other bits and pieces and a couple of other things that have sort of come up in between that time. There is a drag racing event coming up shortly, not too far away from where I live, about 45 minutes from here. So I plan on driving the car there, racing it and bringing it back. So I'll just sort of go through and, I won't show you what we're doing step by step right now. I'll just sort of start doing things and just sort of explain them to you as I'm doing them. So yeah, we'll get into it. So the first thing I did is just go through and put one of my business stickers on the back of the car, just for a little bit of free advertising, you know, starting with the priorities. A couple of things I've already done. I just took the oil catch can off and just emptied it out. There wasn't really anything in it, so that was fine. This pulley there, which is an idler pulley, which is normally where a power steering pump would sit, so that had a plastic pulley and the bearing was a little bit noisy. So I've actually already replaced that with a steel one, and I've also put a new belt on it as well. So that's that. And another thing that I've done is it's had a knock in the front suspension for probably like 2 years, and I've never really taken much notice as to what was going on with it. And as I was sort of looking under here, I noticed that this sort of in the middle of the screen there, that bolt and nut there, that nut was actually missing off that bolt. And that bolt is actually for the upper arm. There's actually 2 bolts that hold it in. The other one was fine, but yeah, that one had no nut on it. And what those do is you've got these shims here that set your wheel alignment specs as well. Yeah, those little shims were just sitting on the chassis rail. So I've just sort of jammed them back in there for now, but I don't know how many have fallen out or whatever. So this thing is gonna go for a wheel alignment tomorrow. You can also see there's a little bit of crusty build-up on this brake proportioning valve. So that's been like that for a very long time. But what I'm actually in the process of doing is I'm ordering a Commodore or master cylinder type, or Commodore style master cylinder. I'm gonna get rid of this chrome thing. Thought it was a good idea to put that on there 15 years ago, but I don't like it anymore. There's nothing else really chrome under here. So I'm going to change that master cylinder, and I'm also going to delete this brake proportioning valve as a result of changing the master cylinder. So whether that, I've just ordered the master cylinder and an adapter today, so whether that comes before the event or not, I don't know. But if it does arrive, you'll see it in this video. We'll just sort of see what happens. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through and pull all the spark plugs out. They're not too hard to get out, and unless in one of these engine bays, plenty of room, especially on the passenger side. These spark plugs have been in here for probably about 3.5 years, and I haven't taken them out. I'm just going to check them, check the marks for them. Spark plugs do tell a story, so it's good to have a look at them every now and then. And if everything's all good, we'll clean them up and put them back in. So we'll start with that. Alrighty, so got the spark plugs out of the driver's side. So they're all out, all 4 of them. Cylinder number 807. Hang on, I'm getting confused. The back one on this side was quite tricky to get out because someone decided to put a car in the way. But anyway, here's the plugs here. So first thing I noticed pulling them out is on 1 or 2 of them, if this will focus, is the little top cap is starting to come off. So we'll just tighten them back down, make sure that's all good. And what we're basically looking at, most importantly, is consistency in all the plugs, that they all look similar, which these do. The slight orangey color on the ceramic comes from higher octane fuel, but none of them are black, which is good. Blackness means either an issue in the cylinder or running too rich in that cylinder. If you can see on the earth strap, you've got a little bit of orangey on the side, and then it goes silver, and that just sort of shows you, that's like a reading of your ignition timing. Please feel free to Google how to read spark plugs. There's a lot of people out there that can explain it better than I can, but these all look pretty good to me. They have been in there for about 3 years, but I've only done maybe 1,500 Ks, 2,000 Ks in that time, maybe a little bit more, not much. So I'm just going to give these a little bit of a clean up on the wire wheel, screw them down with some degreaser, and I'll bang them back in, and we'll get started on the other side. 4 cleaned up spark plugs. Pop these in, do the same on the other side. Cool beans, passenger side is done. It was the same story on the plugs. They looked the same as the other side, so I did the same thing. A couple of loose caps on the end, so tighten them up, clean them up, put them back in. That's all done. The other thing I've done too is I just pulled the intake off the front of the throttle body here, and I just had a look in here to make sure that there was no dirtiness or crud built up in there. And there was just like a tiny little bit of dirtiness in there, so just cleaned that out. Normally I'd spray stuff directly in there and scrub it out and then start the engine and cycle it through, but because I've just cleaned the plugs, I didn't do that. So I just sprayed some cleaner onto a rag, just wiped it out with my hand. So I'll put that back on now and we'll go on to the next job. Alrighty, so that job's all done. That's all back together. Now, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret, something a little bit personal, a little pet hate of mine. I hate squeaks and creaks, which is why I wanna fix this. I want to get to the bottom of where this is coming from. So when the car is sitting there idling and you've got your window down, all you can hear is that, and it drives me nuts. Hopefully it's a quick fix and I don't end up pulling the whole front end off this thing, but I want to have a quick look and see what's going on. All right, I took the headlight bezel off. It still makes the noise, but I have found what's causing it. So if I look under the front of the car, this little bit of metal here is rubbing on the front bumper bracket, right there. So I'm just going to clearance that and that should fix. All right, all fixed. What I ended up doing is just bending this little bit of metal down here that was touching the bumper bar bracket. I've bent that up a little bit from underneath, put the bezel back in, and no more squeaks. So that is awesome, and not a moment too soon, because now I need to go drop it off to get the wheel alignment sorted out. Yeah, not the greatest specs. All right, we're back home. That'd be right. Now the sun's shining again. So yeah, as you saw, it started bucketing with rain while I was there. Sun was shining before I left, the sun is shining now. But yeah, just started raining out of nowhere. And my number one rule for this car is I don't like driving it when it's raining. I don't like getting it wet. They are called rust buckets for a reason. And yeah, I don't like driving it when it's raining. I did wait for the rain to stop, but old mate wanted to shut up shop, so I had to get going, and I just drove home on wet roads. So now, yeah, she is quite dirty, but it drives completely different considering how far out the alignment was. So anyway, we'll get on to the next task. On the hoist, I've sort of jumped ahead a little bit. I forgot to do an update video as to what I'm doing next. But my next job is, I've had a small, very, very slight leak from the diff. So as I mentioned in a previous video, it is running a 9-inch diff with Commodore brakes, which means it's got Commodore axle tubes on it and Commodore back brakes welded onto the 9-inch diff. And it's had a very slight leak, sort of been running around the housing area. And I thought, you know, maybe it's the gasket for the third member. So a little while ago, I replaced that and it made no difference. And what I've done, I've actually removed this side exhaust to the tailpipe to then drop the sway bar down a bit. And what I've actually now found is there's this booger weld here, sort of where the axle tube is welded onto the housing. Now you can't see that when the sway bar is in place because the sway bar mount sort of goes right on that joint, so you can't really see it. And if you look closely, there's like a couple of pinholes sort of in this weld. And it looks like that's where a little bit of oil is just seeping out through. So it's not ideal having a booger weld there, but it's not going to hurt anyone. So I'm not going to grind it all off. What my plan is to do is to, like, I've cleaned it up with the wire brush. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over it with a TIG torch and just sort of like try and melt it all back together. And hopefully that stops the leak as well. I'm not sure how this is going to turn out because I'm sure, as it's had a very slight leak, all of this is going to be permeated with oil. So it might just flare up and not want to weld. If that's the case, I'll have to reassess, but I'm going to give it a go. Well, it's sort of done. It sucked unicorn horn, but anyway, it is what it is. I tried to go over it with the TIG, and as the metal warmed up, there was 2 pinholes that you could actually see a little bit of diff oil just seeping out of. And it was just flaring up and not doing a good thing. So buzzed it back with a flappy disc, and then I just went over it with the MIG and squirted it black. yeah, it just sucked. Got me old finger with the old flappy disc. So for all of my other peoples out there that do metalwork and that have ever experienced the joy of copping your finger with a flappy disc on an angle grinder, I'm sure you know what that feels like. But anyway, I'll put the sway bar and all that back on, I'll put the exhaust back on, and on to the next job. Okay, under the back of the car is all back together, and now we're on to the next job. So you may have heard me mention earlier in this video that I have some brake stuff on order. Mind you, this video is being done over the course of a couple of weeks, so I'm just sort of jumping on and off this car. So I've got it back on the hoist now, and yeah, so I wanted to do something about the brakes, particularly the master cylinder. So last video, we refreshed the front brakes, and that's all fine. But I want to ditch this chrome master cylinder for a couple of reasons. One, I think that the main reason, I think there's an issue with it because if you are sitting stationary with your foot on the brake pedal does slowly sink to the floor, which normally means there's an issue with the master cylinder. Other reason is because I want to remove the proportioning valve system, which is down here, very old school tech, and this one is actually starting to leak down there. It's a little bit crusty. And thirdly, and least importantly, I actually don't like the look of it. I don't like this big chrome bulky thing being in the engine bay. So what am I going to do about it? So you can get these adapters here. So this is basically what we're going to be utilizing. So you can get these adapters. So what this does is it converts from HQ to HZ or HQ to WB brake booster to run a VT Commodore master cylinder. So I've ordered one of them. But the thing is, I'm not going to use a VT Commodore master cylinder for a couple of reasons. I've got a brand new VS Commodore master cylinder, which I've had sitting on my shelf for ages. So I'm going to try and use that. That's a VT Commodore reservoir, brake fluid reservoir. And you can see there's a difference in the angle. So it's just how it ends up sitting. If the master cylinder sits on an angle, probably want to use the VT one as it's less of an angle. If you look at it this way. So anyways, and then I've got some brake lines to convert to, so I'm basically going to replace all of the front brake hard lines, and then just use this one to tap into the factory rear line, and that will delete the proportioning valve as well. The reason why I'm going VS is it's got VS Commodore rear discs, so that's going to be fine, but it's got the Gerlock HZ DeVille front brake calipers. I'm not using a VT master cylinder. One, as I said, I've already had this one, but also the VT Commodores onwards, they run a twin piston front caliper, whereas these are a single piston. On these brakes, they're a single piston, but the piston in these front brake calipers is about 10 mil bigger than what a VS front brake caliper would run. So I'm just trying to get through all this and understand it in my own head. So is this going to work? I don't know. Being a bigger diameter front piston is what a caliper is, what a VS had, and may mean that the brake pedal grabs a little bit later than I'd like or whatever. I don't really know. I'm just going to basically, the only way to find out is to see if it works. And the other thing we need to overcome is where the piston goes into the master cylinder here, if that's going to be the right length. So once we get it apart, we'll have to measure that up and see if we need to lengthen or shorten that. So first things first, I will get the lid off this. I will get the brake fluid drain sucked out of it. And yeah, we'll pull it forward and have a look, see what's behind it, and sort of go from there. Sweet as, I've taken the two hard lines off that go from the master cylinder down to the proportioning valve. And then I've removed the master cylinder, so it is just chilling down there. Far out, the weight in that thing being a big bit of billet aluminium. The new one, honestly, I'd say it's just under half the weight of that. So that's amazing. The weight difference in that. So I've gone through and taken a bunch of measurements. So the first measurement I took, basically put a straight edge on here. So as you can see, I've put the adapter plate on here, the adapter. I took a straight edge on there and I measured the distance from there to the start of the rod. Then once I did that, I took a measurement from the mounting surface to the bottom of the piston there, or the bottom of the flange. And that's 32 mil. And then I took a measurement from inside to that mounting surface there, which was 30 mil. Anyway, long story short, I won't bore you with the math and how I worked it out. It's about 2 or 3 millimeters from the end of the piston to it bottoming out inside here. So honestly, I'm saying that that's pretty much perfect. I'm not going to bother with anything trying to extend this or anything like that. I'm sort of happy with that. So What I'm going to do now is go through and pull out more of these hard lines. I'll remove the proportioning valve. Yeah, and we'll just sort of keep getting through it. All the brake hard lines out. So all the small ones are down in there. The one that goes to the left-hand front wheel is here. Had to pull out the old persuasion pliers on a couple of the fittings. But I did want to keep the lines intact just in case this doesn't work out. The proportioning valve is still up on the rail, but while I've got the car up on the hoist, I've started making up or bending up the new left-hand front line. So the left-hand front line is going to be in 2 pieces, and it sort of goes like that, sort of just following the original one. So while I'm under here, I'm going to get that in there and then drop it down and keep going. A bit of progress. So I've got the first half of this brake hard line in, so that sort of just goes down halfway to the K-frame. Then there'll be a joiner in it. Got the proportioning valve out, just in there. And then there's also this bracket that I've removed that just sort of went on here onto the upper control arm bolts, and that held the proportioning valve. So I figured I don't need that anymore, so see you later. All right, we'll keep going. Beautiful brake job is done. Everything's all bled up. Had a little bit of an issue with the brake bleeder on the left front wheel with a stripped head, but used the old persuasion pliers again and it came out, so that's fine. Brake pedal feels amazing actually, so even with it just sitting on the hoist, the brake pedal feels really good, but we won't know exactly how it is until we drive it and see how the brakes actually feel on road, if anything's going to be grabbing or wanting to lock up rears or anything like that. But yeah, it's a bit of a neater look now without the proportioning valve down there. I do want to rejig this right front line a little bit. It's just sort of hanging out for now. Little bonus as well is this plug under here, this connector. That plugged onto the proportioning valve, and don't quote me, but I believe it's the low pressure warning light on the dash. That plugs straight into the plug on the bottom of this master cylinder. So yeah, a little win. So last thing I want to do while it's on the hoist is I want to lift it back up, and we're just going to do an oil filter change on it. Sure, if I mentioned it in my last video, but this is the oil and the oil filter that I use in my car. I also mentioned in the last video that I'm sure the internet will tell me I'm using the wrong oil in my LS, but this is what I've always used, and I've always found it to work really well. So that's what I use. All right, we have fast forwarded a couple of days, and as you can see, Zed is back in his spot. Yes, it's up on jack stands and the wheels are off it, but I'll explain what's going on in a sec. Got good news and bad news. Good news is detailer has just left. He's just been here and given the car a good clean inside and out, and he's ceramic coated it as well. While he was here though, I have just received word that racing, which is actually scheduled for tomorrow morning, the drag racing we were going to do has been cancelled due to bad weather. Which is okay, doesn't bother me, because I would not have been able to run this car anyway, and I'll tell you why. So bad news, as you can see, well, as you know, earlier in this video, we did the brake master cylinder. So we put the VS Commodore brake master cylinder on it. So it all bled up fine. It felt okay when it was on the hoist, but once you had the car running and the brakes became power brakes, like they had the booster behind them, the brake pedal was quite low, and driving the car, it just didn't feel right. Like, the brake pedal was quite low. You could actually even push the brake pedal to the floor if you pushed hard enough. Sometimes it would lock up the fronts when you do that, and sometimes you could push it to the floor and it wouldn't even try to lock up wheels, and it just didn't feel right. So this is a VS brake master cylinder, which has a 7/8 bore inside it. So what I am doing now is I have ordered a VT one. So I was sort of touch and go if this one was going to work. As I did say, I did have this sitting on the shelf in a box. It was brand new. The VT one physically looks exactly the same, and it fits up the same. So I've got one of them on order, and that will be here in a couple of days. So I'll swap that over. I won't bother filming it. But in the process of trying to get to the bottom of the spongy brakes, I did end up re-bleeding the brakes a couple of times, and in the process, I had an issue when we were bleeding them with the left front bleeder. The head of the bleeder was rounded. And then after we bled them all, I had an issue with this one where it was actually leaking brake fluid from the threads of the bleeder. So it's actually pushing brake fluid past the threads. So I've tried to do a repair on that, and I've helicoiled it, and I'm using a different bleeder in it now. but I don't know if it's going to work or anything yet until the new brake master cylinder comes, then I'll bleed it all up again. The other reason why we're not going to be race ready for tomorrow is I wanted to get some new tires as well. So here's my wheels here. I took the wheels off because I wanted to go get some new rear tires. These are my rear tires here. And as you can see, they're worn down to the wear indicator pretty much. They're also quite old. So I wanted to get 4 new tires, something a bit stickier for the rear. And these are my fronts. And yeah, these are actually date stamped from 2003. So they're a very, very old tire. I remember when I bought these tires, I bought them secondhand way back when, and you can't even get this tire size anymore. This is a 185/80/15, and you can't really see, but there's a bunch of cracks in the sidewalls and stuff. They're just nasty. So I have ordered 4 new tires. They are coming as well. But yeah, I didn't want to race on those tires. I'd get to no grip. So that's basically where we're at. Once the new tires come and the brakes and all that happen, I'll do an update. Yeah, probably sometime during the course of next week. Alrighty, we're jumping forward a few days now with the HZ. So the new brake master cylinder has arrived. This is the VS one that I had that we fitted the other day. And this is a VT one, which is the new one. Physically, they are the same size. Externally, they look the same. They bolt up the same. The only difference was that I had to do was this little switch that goes in the bottom of the master cylinder there was missing off the new one. So I just took that out of that one and put it in this one. So the only 2 main differences are the reservoirs. So you can see the shape of the VS one has a slant to it, whereas the VT one, the slant is not as great. So this one does hold a little bit more fluid. I did touch on that earlier in the video. But if you actually look down them, you can see the diameter of the piston in the VS one compared to the VT one. So you can actually see this one is physically a lot bigger. That is a 1-inch bore, and that is a 15/16 bore, or a 7/8, something like that. I can't really remember. So yeah, hoping that this one is going to move a bit more fluid and be able to give me a bit more brake pressure. So I'll fit that up, bleed it up, and hope for the best. Okay, and we're back. So it's actually been about a week and a half since we left off, and we left off with me basically waiting on some more parts to come for the brakes so I could finish them off, and also we were going to go get some new tires for my rims. Brake stuff has finally arrived. It was quite a mission to try and find some brake bleeders, but we've got them. I've just got to basically put the bleeders in now and re-bleed the brakes. I'm not going to bother filming that because you've already seen it. And we were going to go get some new tires. Now, we'll apologize in advance. I'm probably going to be speaking for the next few minutes, but I'll fill you in on what's happened. Went to get tires. It created a few problems. So first issue was, can't get these tires anymore. These are a 185/80/15, as I said before. That's fine. We could overcome that by getting a 205/65/15, which would have fitted and been pretty much the same height. And the back is a 235/60/15, which is a bit skinny for one of these because you can run a 255, sometimes a 265 on these untubbed. But 235 is the widest I can go, and I'll explain why. So I'll come back to the wheels in a sec. When I did a 9-inch diff conversion on this some 14 odd years ago, I supplied the diff shop with the width that I wanted the diff made to. These do come factory with drum brakes on the rear, and I went to a Commodore disc brake setup. What I didn't calculate for is inside here is where the handbrake runs, and I didn't equate for this width here. So I basically measured from here across, and I said to make it to that width. As a result, the diff is actually this much too wide. So what actually happened is when I went to put these wheels back on is the tire, even with a 235 tire on it, was hard up against the quarter panel. And I mean hard up against it. It was sitting right about here. So it was no good. So as a result, what I did at the time, and it was dodgy, but no one really cared back then. I'll show you on the front wheel. As you can see, there's quite a bit of width here on the inside of the wheel. This is the mounting surface. What I did is I actually had 1 inch of backspacing machined off the back wheels. So off those two, which was able to sit the wheel in a bit. So for those of you that don't understand what backspacing is, if you basically take an imaginary line from across the rim, so from the back edge of the rim, and measure down from that edge down to the mounting surface of the wheel, that's your backspacing. So standard HQ to WB backspacing is 3.5 inches. So these are a 3.5 inch backspace, and after the wheels got machined, it was a 4.5 inch backspace on the rear, but that still wasn't quite enough because it only meant I could run a 235 tire.
So what's actually happened on the back wheels, I won't bother taking these wheels off and showing you, is it's actually cracked. So one of the back wheels has got a crack from here straight through to the center of the wheel. So not ideal, and the reason why is because this material is thinner on the back wheels. So came the problem of I needed to find a couple of new wheels. Trying to find these wheels again, so these are Weld Pro Stars, absolutely impossible. Tried every option, everything that I know. I put posts out on social media, no one could find some. I was hoping I could find a couple and get them remachined, because I do like how the car looks. I love how the car looks with these wheels, but unfortunately I couldn't. So then I was like, well, my only option is maybe I'm gonna have to go new wheels, but I need something that has two different back spacings. I want the wheels to look the same. So I wanted something with a 3.5 inch standard back space for the front, and either a 4.5 inch so I can run a 235 tire, or ideally a 5.5 inch back space on the rear so I can go wider. And I did find some. So the answer, and I don't know if the answer is temporary or permanent, because as I said, I do like these wheels on the car, but the answer is these. So these are Pro Drag Forge Series wheels. You may have seen these on several other vehicles on YouTube and the internet before. They are quite a popular wheel, and they do come in several different offsets as well. So they are both HQ stud pattern. The smallest diameter they make these wheels to suit HQ stud pattern is a 17 inch. So they are both 17 inch wheels. The fronts are a 17 by 6 with a 3.5 inch back spacing. Meanwhile, the rears are a 17 by 8.5 inch with a 5.5 inch back spacing. So wider wheel sits the wheel in a bit more, but because of the extra back spacing, even though it is 2.5 inches wider, it only has an extra 1/2 inch lip on the wheel. And I do like having that dished look on the back wheels. So that's one reason why I don't know about these wheels just yet. And also don't know how I'm feeling about the black. So as for tyres, we've gone a 205 55/17 on the front in a Bridgestone Potenza RE003. I highly rate these tyres. I've run them before. It has been a while since I've used them. I've even used them in circuit racing, and they grip really, really well. Quite soft, tons of grip. So I'm happy with them. As for the rear, I ideally wanted to go something like a semi-slick or something, but they are not available in the size that I wanted. The size is a 255 45/17, so I am able to go up now to a 255 over a 235. So for now, I just got something cheap. So they are a Good Ride SA37. There is a slightly cheaper version of this Good Ride tire that has a lower speed and load rating. I think it was like $5 a tire more, so I went these ones. So I just got something cheap for now, until a better tire comes available in the size and brand that I want. So, sorry for all of the talking. I know it's been about 4 or 5 minutes, but all that's basically left now is I'm gonna go through and finish off the brakes, get it all bled up. We'll put these wheels on the car, hope and pray that they fit. And hopefully the next time you see the car, it'll be on the ground, all finished with the new wheels on, and we'll be able to have a proper look at it. Rightio, internet friends, we are all finished. So from the time we started this video to the time we finished this video, it's actually been about 5 weeks for me. Luckily, it's only gonna be about 30 minutes for you. So we are all looking good. Everything's all done. So I gave the brakes a little bit of just a quick squirt while I had the wheels off before I put the new wheels on. Everything's arrived, everything's here, everything's fitted. So that's sort of how it looks now. Let me know what you think. I don't hate it. I do like how it looks with the other wheels. I do also like this. I'm just sort of torn as to which I like better. So there's the VT master cylinder that you saw me fit. Well, you saw me fit the VS one. You didn't see me redo that. So we've got these 255s on the back, looking nice and fat. Sweet. Thanks always for watching, guys. I do apologize that this video has dragged on a bit, and I know that I spoke quite a lot through it, but yeah, thanks for joining me in giving the Z a bit of a different look, giving it a bit better stopping power, and also just fixing a few things. So the next video will probably be, I don't know 100% for sure, sort of just depends how everything goes with timeframes and events, but will probably be when I take this thing drag racing. That event is scheduled for next week.
I think, or the week after. I'd have to double check. But now that the car's sort of like all set up, ready to go, that's sort of the plan. So we'll stay tuned for that and see what happens. So yeah, thanks always again, guys. I really appreciate you supporting my videos and watching. Please always remember to like and subscribe, and we will catch you in the next video. Be good, stay safe, take care.